Hello students, today we'll study the unit 4 of organization behavior and this unit is all about organization culture, climate, conflict, power, politics, negotiation, emotional intelligence, knowledge management and many more. Now first of all, let's understand the organization culture. Organization culture refers to the personality or the traits of an organization. It emphasizes on the values, beliefs, and customs of the employees of the organization. So, basically, organization culture is a set of assumptions, beliefs, values, and norms that are shared by an organization's member. So it is characterize an organization in terms of what it is and what it is stands for and what it is all about. It is what derives the organization, and it also determines how the members of the organization perceives, how the members of the organization thinks, how they feel and how they behave. And basically it is closely associated with the organization values. So organization culture is basically associated with the organization values, and each and every member of the organization has to follow the organization culture in which they are working. And one organization culture is different from the another because each and every organization is having their own set of cultures. Now, the four type of organization cultures. Basically, there are four types of organization culture. First is the clan culture, then the hierarchy culture, then the adhocracy culture, then the market culture. So, the clan culture. Basically, in this culture, employees always share their bond, they always feel that organization is their family, and they share their same interest, similar commitments level, and they always help each other with a strong feeling of bond. Then the hierarchy culture. Hierarchy culture is very important because every member of the organization has to follow this culture, because in this the working environment is considered well defined as formal, and there are strict rules, regulations and policies which each and every member has to ensure that they have to follow the policies and procedures to maintain the efficiency and consistency of the organization. Then the next is adhocracy culture. In this culture, employees have a strong commitment in creating new standards because organization always needs some kind of progress. So it is very important for the employees to always look for new opportunities, for new improvements, and always ready to find the creative solutions, creative way for the growth of the organization. Then the next is the market culture. Market culture means the core values are based on the winning and beating all the rivals. Market culture is basically an external environment. So the business strategies, measures and procedures are aligned toward the market requirement. So it is the responsibility of an employee that to follow the organization's culture, as well as to take the organization for a new growth and by following all the rules and regulation. So this is all about the types of organization culture. Now next is process of creating organization culture. So the first is establish values. When a new organization is developing its culture, the first step is creating of values, because values plays a very important role, because each and every organization is having its own value. The members of the organization needs to follow those values. So environmental and strategic analysis is conducted to examine the economic, demographic, public policy, social and technology practice in order to recognize the demands in the marketplace that the organization can fulfill. Then next is create vision. Once the strategy and cultural values are developed, an organization needs to create a vision. Vision for what? Vision refers to the image of the organization would appear in the future it shows that the organization will mix its strategies and cultural values to shape its future. For example, the vision of an insurance company. So what is the vision of an insurance company? To improve the standard of living of 20 lakh customers. So for this, company will contribute its strategic and cultural values so that the employees will become aware about their performance targets. So theoretically, what we can say, the vision statement should be in written first, but practically strategic and cultural values should be prepared prior to it for making a meaningful vision. So vision is the create vision is the second stage of the creating organization culture, and each and every organization has a different vision. The next is initiate implementing strategies. This step focuses on developing implementation strategies, and it is based on the values so that the vision of the organization can be attained. Strategies include various factors ranging from creating the organization design to recruiting, training. We can take one example over here, like if a bank has a custom of handling customer loans, deposits and savings. This is the basic work of a bank. So if bank is deciding that now they will give more attention for the customer service as well, so what they need to do, they have to hire some new employees. That employees will maintain and build the sustainable relationships with the customers. So bank also need to provide long term training to its present manpower to guide them regarding the new culture whose focus is on customer service. So this is the new culture of the bank, that they have to build a new culture, that customer service is their main aim now. The next is reinforce cultural behavior. The organization need to keep a check on the employees' behavior and reinforce if the employees are deviating from the cultural values. So it is the responsibility of the organization to look into it time to time, that employees are following their values, their culture or not. So for that, this reinforcement can be done in many ways. Like employees can be formally rewarded for excellent behavior. If the employees are following all the values, all the customers, so they should be rewarded for their excellent behavior. Or employees behavior, like admirable behavior, those who are performing well, following all the regulations, all the rules of the company, that employee must be acknowledged. So by these ways, the organization can reinforce their cultural behavior. Now next is maintaining organizational culture. First is behavior of managers and team. A very effective method of maintaining and sustaining the organizational culture consists of incorporating those programs and behavior that the managers, work groups and employee notice. That is the event that gain the attention of people. So it is very important to do those type of event in which the attention of the people can be gained. Then next is reaction to incidents and crisis. Crisis might occur every now and then in an organization. How the managers handle major crises like terrorist attacks or major issues, which tells about the culture of the organization. The next is role modeling, teaching and coaching. Employees learn about the various aspects of the organization culture by the behavior of the manager towards them. Next is allocation of rewards and status. So reward system also teach an employee about the organization culture. The prize and penalty, there would be a prize and there would be penalty also. The prize and penalty associated with different behavior tells them about the importance of both the managers and the organization. Then next is recruitment, selection, promotion and removal. The basic method through which an organization maintains its culture is recruitment. Further to decision regarding the job specification, promotion, early retirement, etc. So, recruitment, selection, promotion, and removal is very important. Then, next is organizational rites and ceremonies. In an organization, there are customs that conveys significant cultural meaning to the employees. These are called organizational rites and ceremonies. For example, award program or these ceremonies apparently enhance the lifestyle and status of the excellent performers, and also conveys that the company is always focusing on reward excellent employees. The next is organizational stories. N number of fundamental moral and ethics of organization's culture are conveyed in the form of stories. These stories convey organization culture from experienced to a new employee, and also stress on the important feature of that culture. So it is very important to understand the new employees about the stories of the organization. Then here we ends with the topic organization culture. Then the next topic is organizational climate. So organizational climate is a collective perception of the work environment by the individuals within a common system. Or we can say the climate of an organization is determined by the various qualities of an organization, which jointly includes its custom, methods of action, culture. These all combined together make an organizational climate. So there are various dimensions of organizational climate. Let's study one by one. First is orientation. Orientation means organizational orientation and dimension hold much significance in shaping the climate. The organizational climate will be control driven if the entire focus is upon following the specified rules and norms. So this is the orientation phase. The next is interpersonal relationship. The manner in which formation of informal groups takes place and their influence on organizational climate reflect the interpersonal relation process of the organization. So this is interpersonal relationship, because when people work in an organization, they always try to create some informal groups. Then next is supervision. An organization climate driven by extension motive will emerge if supervisors will help their subordinates in enhancing their skills and growth prospects. Then next is problem handling. A major dimension of creating organization climate is the way supervisor handles and manage organization problem. So it is very important part of the supervisor that how he handles and manage all the problems of the organization. Then management of mistakes. A supervisor might tolerate, get annoyed, or feel concerned when a subordinate makes a mistake. So this is the attitude of a supervisor, that how he take the mistakes of the employee and how they make him learn. The next is conflict management. An organization might make efforts to hide the conflict or resolve them. So it always influences the organization climate to a great extent. The next is communication. The manner in which communication flows, like top down, vertical, horizontal, and bottom up, makes a communication a significant determinant of organizational climate. The next is trust. The level of trust among the group members also influence the organization climate, because it is a major factor that who are the people to be trusted and at what extent. Because management cannot trust everyone in the organization. So this is a major factor, that who all are the people to be trusted and at what extent. The next is factors affecting organizational climate. Here, the organization climate has divided into two segments by Richard M. He is the developer of this model. So he has divided it into two segments. According to him, the organization climate can be compared to an iceberg whose one part is visible and one part is visible, that is above the surface of water, while the another part is invisible, like beneath the water. So one part is visible and another part is invisible. So there are two factors, or we can say two segments. One is overt factors and second is covert factors. So what is overt factors? Overt factors are concrete, simple, direct and visible to all. So these factors are called overt factors. Overt factors always includes hierarchy, financial resources, goals of organization, skills and abilities of personnel, technical states, technological states, then performance standards, efficiency measurements. These all are the overt factors which are visible and which are visible and above the surface. Then next are covert factors. Covert factors consist of abstract elements that are dependent on culture. These factors cannot be measured because of their subjectivity. So these are invisible factors, or we can say beneath the water. These factors includes attitude, feeling, values, norms, interaction, supportiveness and satisfaction. So these all are the covert factors. Now the next topic is conflict management. So what is conflict? What is conflict? Conflict is defined as opposition or dispute between persons, groups or ideas. Basically, it includes a wide range of conflict that people experience in an organization. Because in an organization, when n number of people work, so there is always conflict occurs. Such as because of incompatibility of goals, because their goals are not compatible, and because of differences over interpretation of facts, because of disagreements, because they don't agree with each other. So at that time conflicts occur. Different views of conflicts. There are different view of conflicts, like the traditional view, which was earlier in our society, then the human relation views and the interactionist view. So let's understand first the traditional view. Traditional view, it is believed that all conflict are harmful and must be avoided. According to the traditional view, all kind of conflict, any conflict are harmful and it should be avoided. It should not be there in the organization. It is the synonyms of violence and destruction. So according to the traditional view, they gave the conflict like a synonym of violence and destruction. They says that all type of conflict should be avoided. So one needs to direct the attention to the cause of the conflict and correct it. Directly go to the cause of the conflict and solve the problem. It has dominated the theory of conflict from 1930s to 1940s. Because of this is our traditional view. But generally it doesn't happen, because conflicts are a natural process and it occurs. Then the next is human relation view. In human relation view, it believes that conflict is a natural and inevitable outcome in any group, because it is a natural process. You cannot avoid this. Because of this inevitable in nature, it was advocated to accept conflict. So in this era, it was like to accept the conflict because it is a natural process. It was thought that conflict may benefit a group performance. Because of the human relation view, they thought that conflict may benefit the group's performance, because if people will fight with each other or conflict with each other, they will try to improve their performance. This was the era of 1940s to 1970s. Then next is the interactionist view. It is believed that conflict is not only positive force, but it is also important for a group to perform more effectively. So, in the interactionist view, what they believe that conflict is not only positive. They feel it is a positive, but it is also important to perform. It is very important for an organization that people of the organization should conflict, because then only the new things will come. The interactionist approach is to encourage group leaders to maintain an ongoing minimum level of conflict. There should be a minimum level of conflict in the organization. Good or bad conflict depends whether the conflict is functional or dysfunctional. Functional conflicts supports the goal of the group. Functional conflict always support the goal of the organization, goal of the group, and it always improves the performance. But dysfunctional conflict hinders the group performance. But the conflict which is of dysfunctional in nature, it always hinders the group, or it always lacks the performance of the group. So there are three views, different views. Then next is process of organizational conflict. There are different stages involved in it. First is latent conflict. Latent conflict, this is the first stage of organizational conflict. In this, conflict may arise when two or more parties are dependent on each other for the accomplishment of their goal. If one person or one party is dependent on another for the accomplishment of goal, then this stage arise. Then next is perceived conflict stage. During this stage, the team member come to know about their problem. They become aware about the needs and always start worrying as to what will happen next. So at this point, they are not able to believe it actually. Then next is felt conflict. This is the stage when an atmosphere of stress and irritation begins to develop, and individuals build up an emotional obligation towards their responsibility. Then next is manifest conflict stage. Conflict become very obvious when the parties plan and operate in a manner that is solely beneficial to them. So these type of actions may include small disparities, questioning and challenging, using abusive language with each other, or giving ultimatums, giving threats, or physical violence will also occur at this stage. The next is conflict resolution or suppression. So this is the last stage. Outcome of the manifest conflict stage can be favorable or non-favorable for one or both the parties. At this stage, it becomes very complex to find a logical solution. So both the parties are confident about their stand and have already realized that the conflict is a win-loss situation. In this, the parties themselves realize that there is a win-loss kind of situation. So if the conflict is recognized in its initial stage, like in its perceived conflict stage or felt conflict stage, if the conflict is recognized, so it will become very easier to obtain a win-win solution. Thereby feelings of irritation and stress can be avoided. So these all are the process of organization conflict. Then next is levels and types of conflicts. So there are three levels, or we can say types of conflict. First is organization, second is group, and third is individual. So at organization level, where organization level is like within and between the organization, conflict occurs within or between the organization. At group level, conflict occurs within and between the groups, and at individual level, conflict occurs within the individual or between the individual. So the next is conflict management techniques. There are various techniques through which conflict can be managed. So management of organizational conflict. First is avoidance or withdrawal. Avoiding style shows low assertiveness regarding one's own interest and low cooperation towards each other's interest. So at this stage, employees, what they do, they show a very low assertiveness, or they show very less cooperation towards each other's interest. So by adopting this approach, the parties can relieve themselves of the stress originating from the conflict, but without making any changes in the scenario. Then next is accommodating, yes, smoothing. It is also it is a low assertiveness but high cooperativeness style. Here the people or employees cooperate with each other. Then next is competing, yeah, dominance. While resolving a conflict using the styles, parties emphasizes on asserting for their own interest and minimizing cooperativeness. They view the conflict as a complete win-loss situation. Then next is compromising. In a compromising stage, equal amount of assertiveness as well as cooperation is required. So basically it is the mid path between the accommodation and competition. The next is collaborating. While implementing collaborative strategies, both assertiveness as well as cooperation is exploited to the maximum, so that the final agreement is beneficial for both the parties. So this is all about the management of organization conflict, because it is very important for the management to always manage the conflict, to always resolve the problems of the people in the organization. Then the next topic is Johari window. So let's understand what is Johari window. The Johari window is developed by Joseph Luft and Harry Ingham. The Johari window is a communication model. Basically, it's a communication model that can improve the understanding between the individual, because after conflict situation, it is very important to understand that what is the way which can improve the understanding between the individuals. So by using the Johari window model, each person is represented by their own 4 quadrants. So there are 4 quadrants, like each individuals is having their 4 quadrants. Each of these contains and represent personal information, feeling, motivation about the person, and shows whether the information is known or not known by themselves or other people. We'll understand this by the model of Johari window. So in this you can see that there is 4 types of quadrants. First is open area, then second is blind area, then third is hidden area, then next is unknown area. So these quadrants are of individuals. Every individuals are having their own 4 quadrants. So talking about the open area is what? It is like known by self and known by others. That means in open area we know our strength, weakness, everything, and others also know. Then blind area, unknown by self. We don't know about anything about some things about ourselves, but others know this thing. Then third is hidden area. In this situation, it is like known by self. We know our things, but unknown by others. Others doesn't know. Then next is last one, that is unknown area. Unknown by self, we don't know anything about us. Unknown by others, and others also don't know. So the 4 quadrants are open area, blind area, then hidden area, or unknown area. So open area, as I already told you, what is known by the person about him or herself, and is known by others also. Then blind area, which is unknown by the person about him or herself, but which others know. This can be simple information or can involve deep issues which are difficult for individuals to face. Then next is hidden area. Hidden area means what person knows about him or herself that others don't. Then next is unknown areas. What is unknown by the person about him or herself and is unknown by the others also. So, by sum up this Johari window, we can say that in most of the cases, the aim in groups should be to develop the open area, the first one for everyone, because in this situation, whatever you know, others also know. There is nothing hidden, nothing blind area sort of thing. So, working in this area with others always allow for enhanced individual and team effectively productivity. So the open area is the space where good communication is there, and there is no confusion, no conflict, no misunderstanding is there. So self disclosure is the process by which people expand the open area vertically, because it is very important to tell your things by yourself instead of using this blind area. So by encouraging healthy self disclosure and sensitive feedback, you can build a stronger and more effective team. So in Johari window, according to the author, this is the area in which open area in which information known to others and information known to self is much more comfortable. Then the next topic is transactional analysis. Transactional analysis is the framework of specific theory of personality and group dynamics. It always explains why people differ from each other and why they behave the way they do with each other. So the transactional analysis basically is a technique used to help people better understand their own and others' behavior, especially in interpersonal relationship. So in transactional analysis, there is a model that is called PAC. PAC means parent, adult and child model. So there are different stages, there is the stage of parent, then adult, then child. So talking about the parent stage, it is like a critical parent. They always try to monitor, they always try to make rules, regulation, expectations for their children, and they always try to taught the concepts of life. Then there is a stage of adult. In this stage, it is like a thought concept of life. That means the planner, the observer, organizer and analyzer, they always try to think logically and rationally and act accordingly. The next is C. C is child model. Child model is like a felt concept of life, the emotion, creativity, or we can say the part of self that makes emotional decisions about self and the world based on the past and present drivers biologically and environment. So this is the model of PAC. In this model there is a ego state. So an ego state is defined as a coherent system of feeling which motivates a related set of behavior. So the ego states are component of our personality, that is parent, adult and children. At each stage the ego states come. Of the three ego state of an individual, any one governs his attitude and behavior at a given point of time. The parent is the nurturing or controlling. The child is like free and natural. So this was all about the transactional analysis. And the next is emotional intelligence. Next topic is emotional intelligence. EQ, emotional intelligence. EI, emotional intelligence. EQ is emotional quotient. So it refers to the emotional management skills which provides competence to balance emotions and reason so as to maximize long-term effectiveness and happiness. So the capacity for recognizing our own feelings and those of others, for motivating ourselves and for managing emotions well in ourselves and in our relationship. So we can say that emotional intelligence is the capacity for recognizing our own feelings and those of others, for motivating ourselves and for managing emotions well in ourselves and in our relationship. Then next is nature or dimensions of emotional intelligence. First is self awareness. Self awareness means knowing about oneself. It is the best way by which an individual can identify his feelings along with his preferences, his inner status, degree of self confidence, and his peace of mind. The next is self management. The ability of an individual to control his desires and emotions is known as self management. It also means self controlling. Then the next is motivation. Individual who is emotionally intelligent is generally highly motivated. Motivation is a drive to achieve. Motivation can be long term or short term goals. Then next is empathy. Empathy is another important dimension of emotional intelligence. It is the ability which makes an individual understand not only the emotions of others but also their outlook towards their needs, desires, feelings, anxieties, etc. Then next is social skills. Social skills are the skills of an individual by which they make association in the society and manage them properly. So this is the nature of or dimensions of emotional intelligence. Now next is emotional intelligence model. It includes four factors: self awareness, social awareness, self management, and relationship management. Self awareness means self confidence, accurate self assessment. Emotional self awareness include self awareness. Then next is self management. Self management is your ability to use your awareness of your emotions to stay flexible and direct your behavior positively. Then next is social behavior. Social behavior is your ability to accurately pick up on the emotion in other people and understand what is really going on with them. So listening and observing are the most important elements of social awareness. How you can build social awareness? Through empathy, responsiveness to other, and organizational awareness. Then next is relationship management. Relationship management is your ability to use your awareness of your own emotions and those of others to manage interactions successfully. So relationship management is also the bond you build with others over a time. So how to better manage relationship? Through conflict management, through inspirational leadership, through influencing others, or through teamwork. So this was all about the emotional intelligence. Now the next topic is knowledge management. What is knowledge? Data, a record of a change of state, information, and knowledge. So there are two types of knowledge. First is explicit and second is tacit. Explicit knowledge includes formal knowledge that is visible to all. Tacit knowledge includes informal knowledge that is highly invisible. Explicit knowledge always available in the form of books, reports, audio tapes, video tapes, etc. And tacit knowledge confined in the mind of a person. So explicit is easy to articulate and it is difficult to articulate the tacit knowledge. There is a hierarchy in knowledge. It includes expertise, knowledge, information, and data. So expertise, data, and information, it includes adding meaning, understanding, relevance, and purpose. Then information and knowledge, it always transform through personal application, values, and beliefs. Then knowledge and expertise, it always enrich through experiences, training, and education. Now, what is knowledge management? It is a process of organizing and distributing an organization's wisdom so that right information goes to the right person at the right time. Or we can say knowledge management is getting the right information to the right person at right time, and it always helps people to create knowledge and sharing and acting on information. The next is knowledge auditing. Knowledge auditing means what amount of knowledge, can be used in organizations, product, services and processes. Then the next topic is power and politics. So what is power? Basically, power refers to the capacity of any individual to influence the behavior of other individual so that they may do the things which he or she would not do otherwise. So people who have it deny it, people who want it try not to appear to be seeking it, and those who are good at getting it secretive about how they got it. So basically we can say power is an exchange process. A person who commands services needed by others or exchange them for compliance with his or her request. Or we can say power is the ability to get things done the way one wants them to be done. So there are sources of power. First is coercive power, then reward power, legitimate power, expert power and referent power. So let's understand it one by one. First is coercive power. It is a power which is based on fear. This power is based on fear. One reacts to this power out of fear of the negative results that might occur if one failed to comply. A coercive power over B, if A has a coercive power over B if A can dismiss or suspend the B. The next is reward power. People fulfill wishes or directives of another because it produces positive benefits. That is, one who can distribute rewards that others view as valuable will have power over them. It is the opposite of coercive power, because coercive power includes fear and reward power includes rewards. Then legitimate power, it represents the power a person receives as a result of his or her position in the form of hierarchy. So legitimate power includes hierarchy. Then expert power is based on special skills, knowledge, expertise. Then the last one is referent power. It is based on influence on the possession by an individual of desirable resources or personality traits of someone which influence an individual. So referent power develops out of admiration of another and is desired to be like that person, like celebrities and all. The next is politics. What is political behavior? Activities that are not required as a part of one's formal role in the organization, but that influence or attempt to influence the distribution of advantage or disadvantage within the organization. Or we can say it includes joining a coalition, spreading rumors, leaking some confidential information, lobbying for against any individual. This is the politics in the organization. Or we can say organization politics can be defined as strategically designed behavior that maximizes self-interest, because self-interest is involved in politics. It is of like two behaviors involved into it: legitimate political behavior and illegitimate political behavior. So the first one, legitimate political behavior, is the normal everyday politics like complaining about someone or forming any coalition, or obstructing organization policies, or not following the rules, regulation. These all are the politics which includes legitimate, and it's a normal in everyday politics. Then next is illegitimate political behavior. This is called extreme political behavior that violates the implied rules of the game, like showing some symbolic protest and sabotage, etc. Now, next is political tactics to gain power. First is bargaining or trade off. In this method, two groups negotiate as per quid pro quo. That means this for that. You give me something, I'll give you that. Agreement with each other. Each group which is involved in conflict agrees on proving some benefits to the other. So they together do the politics in the organization. The next is competition. Every organization has a limited availability of resources. So for achieving these groups try to manipulate the various parameters on which resources are distributed among the various groups, such as fund, support staff, space. They all together do the politics in competition. Then co-optation. In this method of gaining political power, the members of the group are either included in the critical decision making forums or offered some virtual positions in the group. So by that position they involve in politics. Then coalition for the attainment of common goals and objective. Various individuals and groups come together to integrate their efforts temporary. The next is pressure. This method of achieving power is quite unfriendly and aggressive. For example, if the management can create a pressure on the trade union of locking down the plant, and if their conditions are not agreed. Similarly, some threat can also be given to the management also by the trade union in the form of strikes, slowdown. So, if management does not accept their request, they can also do strikes. So, this is the both way thing. Then control over information. By regulating and monitoring the circulation of vital information in the organization, political power can be gained. Then control over communication. A very significant amount of political power can be acquired by the members of low level of management who have the control over various communication channel of the organization. For example, if the personal assistant to vice president can be considered as a powerful person, as he has a direct access to vital information because he use all the system, all the information, he sets all the meetings of the vice president. So he is a powerful source of information to take and to give to someone who wants to do or politics in the organization. Then the next topic is negotiation, a process in which two or more parties exchange goods or services and attempt to agree on the exchange rate for them. This is called negotiation. So there are two general approaches of negotiation. First is distributive bargaining and second is integrative bargaining. So distributive bargaining, it includes negotiation that seeks to divide up a fixed amount of resources. It is a win-loss situation. It operates under zero-sum condition, and the best example is labor management negotiation over wages. Or we can say negotiation is a basic means of getting what you want from others. So in distributive bargaining or in distributive negotiation are also known as competitive negotiation, and the other terms commonly used for distributive negotiation are claiming values. That means win-loss bargaining. Then next is integrative negotiation. Integrative negotiation are also known as collaborative negotiation. This is also commonly termed as interest-based bargaining, or we can say win-win bargaining. Then negotiation, there are certain characteristics of bargaining and distributive characteristics, integrative characteristics. So I will talking about the characteristics. It is distributive and it is integrative. Then available resources. In distributive, fixed resources to be divided amount of, and in integrative, variable amount of resources to be divided. Then primary motivation, I win, you lose. And in integrative, it is the situation when I win, you also win. Primary interest opposed to each other, they always try to oppose each other. And in the integrative characteristic, convergent or congruent with each other, because they support each other, they always share their experiences with each other. Focus of relationship, short term in distributive characteristics, and it is long term in integrative characteristics. The next is the process of negotiation. First is preparation and planning. So this steps call for understanding the nature of dispute, issues, or causes for negotiation to take place. So there are parties involved, viewpoint of parties, expectations and objectives of negotiation. So this is the first stage in which planning and preparation is required. The next is definition of ground rules. After planning, developing the strategic plan, the rules and the process to be followed should be made aware to all the parties. It is very important to define the ground rules to all the parties. The next is clarification and justification. In this step, the parties to negotiation have an opportunity to support their demands to their counterparts by justifying and emphasizing them in the most convincing manner. So this is the phase of clarification and justification. The next is bargaining and problem solving. The particular stage comes into play only after the parties to the negotiation have become fully familiar with each other's requirement and constraints. The next is closure and implementation stage. So this is the final agreement, which is the outcome of the negotiation, has to be put in formal ways under the final step, and here all the conflicts, all the grudges clarifies, and this is the final step. So however, most negotiation conclude in a formal way, just through a handshake. So here we have completed with our fourth unit. So in the next lecture we are going to cover our fifth unit, or the last unit. So thank you so much, students, and stay home, stay safe. Goodbye.